everyone, welcome to the Wyndham Social. Before the event starts, let me have a quick intro about this beautiful venue. Then I will pass the mic to April to start the talk. Okay, so I'm Gladys from Wyndham Social, and thanks April and Michael to let us have a quick brief about this place. Wyndham Social is a cultural and artistic social platform established by the Peterson Group in August 2022, and we are actively collaborating with the artists and creative unit to bring events here by organizing exhibitions, sharing talks, and workshops to gather a vibrant community, art and cultural lovers to gather here. The main goal to share their ideas and cultural exchanges. We are very happy to collab with the Hong Kong Bach Choir again, and Michael. Feel free to reach out if you are interested in more about our space, and welcome to follow our Instagram and join our Friends of Wyndham Social community to receive the latest event news. Thank you very much.
Hello everybody, I am April Wong, the chairperson of the Hong Kong Bach Choir. And it's my real pleasure to be back here again for our second concert. So this is our second pre-concert talk series that is supported really kindly by Wyndham Social for the venue and Pinewood Wine for the wine sponsorship. So everything that you get to taste tonight, the amber wine, the red, the port, it's paired with our concert repertoire with the two Rossini pieces. So we got an Italian amber and an Italian red. And then for our 𝗂𝗏 Lobos piece, which is Brazilian, we couldn't find anything from Brazil. So we got a port from Portugal. And I won't talk too much about the repertoire and our pieces because that's Jerry's talk. So I guess that's about it. So let's welcome Jerome Hoberman, our music director and our conductor, for introducing the repertoire for our upcoming concert on December the 1st, which is on Monday. And thank you, Jerry.
Thank you, April. Thank you, Michael. Thank you, Wyndham Social. I want to begin with a question to you. How many of you know any operas by Rossini? Hand down. Yeah. Anybody else? So, no, Samantha can't answer this. So what do you know? After two, you start having to reach into your brain. Anybody else? So she said La Cenerentola, which is Cinderella, and Barber of Seville. Anybody else? Any others? How many of you have seen any operas by Rossini? Again, a few of you. Now, I mean, those are exactly the answers I expected. I was really worried that somebody would, rattle off 37 names. Then I'd be in trouble. I wouldn't have any talk. The thing that's really intriguing to me about this is that 200 years ago, Rossini was probably the most famous living person in the world. And to think that in 200 years, going from that to the toast of the world at a time before social media, before recording, before cars and airplanes, actually before steam, before the telegraph. I mean, when people traveled by stagecoach and sailboat and word got around by literally snail mail almost. To think that we've gone from that to somebody who's pretty obscure. I mean, you think of Italian opera, you can, what comes to mind, Verdi and Puccini And if you're really into it, maybe Donizetti and Bellini and people like that. Rossini kind of brings up the rear. Everybody knows he's kind of the antecedent, the predecessor. But he, in his lifetime, he had a reach that was greater than any of these. So I want to think a little bit about why that might be. Because one of the reasons we're doing this, this program is to suggest why it shouldn't be. I mean, you can make other comparisons. Of course, now what Rossini was then, you might say Taylor Swift is now. But Taylor Swift has the advantages of social media, and I mean, anything she does is immediately reported. But there is a kind of similarity in that what Taylor Swift does is entertainment. And what Rossini did, what opera was in his time, was entertainment and no more. That is, the idea that opera could change people's lives, could change the world, really comes later with Wagner and people after Wagner. So we have to go back and imagine a world in which opera is the, Italian opera, is the medium for all classes and types of people to meet in the opera house. And Rossini was the kind of the king of that. The most famous and least remembered musician I can think of. Well, I think one thing is that, and what really intrigues me about Rossini, is that he's kind of the perfect meeting of the classical style and the romantic style. Classical style we use to refer to people like Mozart, Schubert, Haydn, Beethoven a little bit, Schubert a little bit. And romantic means like Chopin, Schumann, and Brahms, and so going from a style in which music was really written for people who were, in a sense, connoisseurs, people who understood the language and could appreciate technical details, form, and again, technique, to a style that raised emotion, both surface emotion and deep emotion, to the greatest depths. Rossini is right there in the middle. He wrote, what he's most famous for, the two you mentioned are both comic operas. And what the little Rossini is known for today is pretty much exclusively his comic operas. He actually wrote more serious operas than comic operas, and they were equally popular. In fact, his first two big international successes, not his first operas, he was already a veteran, his first two smash successes all over the world in 1813 when he was 21. He wrote his first opera when he was 18. One was a serious opera, Tancredi, and the other was a comic opera, L'Italiana in Algeri, the Italian girl in Algiers, of which from which we'll open our concert with the overture. So Rossini was, and sort of comic operas, because they're purely for entertainment, maybe tilt a little bit towards the classical side, and the serious operas tilt a little bit towards the romantic side, perhaps. So in doing this, Rossini had to become very versatile. I mean, Rossini might write 2 or 3 or even 4 operas in a year, which means just like a pop composer, a songwriter now, or a Broadway composer now, has to rely very much on formulas. Not to say that he's not original, but you write a piece in this style, you write, say, on Broadway, this piece is a waltz, and this piece is a ballad, and this piece is that style, and so on. And you bring your originality into that form. Rossini very much did the same, and he was under tremendous pressure. I mean, sometimes he might have to write an opera in about 3 weeks. Nothing new. Handel would write an oratorio in about 2 or 3 weeks also. But of course, that meant he was reusing material. So he had to write stuff that could be very flexible. We were talking just before, a few minutes ago, Samantha Chong, the wonderful mezzo-soprano who you'll be hearing in this concert. We were chatting about this piece that we're doing together. One of the things we mentioned was that in the piece that we're performing, the Stabat Mater, you can almost pick which Rossini opera it could have, any one movement might have easily found a place. It's that kind of versatility. So Rossini wrote 37 operas. That's pretty much all he wrote during his prime. How could he have time to do anything else? He was spending all his time composing and discussing projects. And from the age of 23, he was also managing and conducting all the opera houses in one of the central operatic cities in Europe, in Naples. So this is a guy who hit it big very young and went right to the top and stayed there through the Napoleonic Wars, through the banishment of Napoleon and the return of the old political forms, somebody who could kind of ride those waves because he was untouchable, because he was so popular that even Beethoven was envious. The year after, right when Rossini left Naples, he led the company in a tour to Vienna, which was one of the great musical centers. His operas were on everybody's lips, literally. I mean, people were singing the music from these operas, singing in the streets. And he went to visit Beethoven, Rossini might have been the most popular, the most famous musician, most famous person in the world to people in general, but musicians regarded Beethoven as the boss, like Springsteen. He went to visit Beethoven, and Beethoven was very respectful to him. He said, but stick to what you know. Stick to comic operas because that's what you Italians are good at. But really, inside, Beethoven was seething because the popularity of Rossini's operas in Vienna meant that Beethoven's own opera, Fidelio, didn't have as big a success as he thought it deserved. So I should keep an eye on the time. So the piece that we're focusing on, the big piece in the program, the Rossini Stabat Mater, which is one of the few big pieces he wrote after he retired from opera composition, which was in 1829 at the age of 37. 37. And after that, it's very rare for a superstar to just quit when they're at the top. But he did. I think it's easy to understand why he might have. That is, by then he was rich. He didn't need the money. He was tired. But he probably also suffered from depression, which was increasingly a problem later in life. So what he did, he spent his life basically as a man about town. He had the most popular weekend gathering of artists and musicians and intellectuals in Paris. Anybody who could attended Rossini's soirees, and for those, he would write these little pieces for fun, little piano pieces or little songs. Ended up over the years with about 100 of those. But he wrote only 2 big pieces in the remainder of his life. The first of them was this Stabat Mater, which came about as a commission from a wealthy person in Spain who wanted a memorial work and commissioned Rossini. This was in, I think, 1830, early 1830s. Rossini needed to get it done really quick, so he invited a collaborator. Rossini wrote about half of it, and the collaborator wrote the other half. And this was performed, wasn't published. But then Rossini realized that, well, he can make some money off of this, and anyway, if he doesn't, somebody else is going to publish it and get the income from it. So he, in 1841, replaced all the movements that were by the other guy with his own new original compositions and published it, and it was performed publicly. The only other work, a big work he composed in the rest of his life came just before he died. It was called the Petite Messe Solennelle, which the Bach Choir has performed on several occasions. The thing about the Stabat Mater, that as I said, it kind of draws from all of Rossini's operatic experience. Every piece in it could be from an opera. And rather than, discuss the different musical movements, I don't want to get technical, because then you don't enjoy the music. Rather than that, I just want to play you a few excerpts. The thing about Stabat Mater is a text that's very important in the Catholic Church, and after the Mass is probably one of the 2 texts most frequently set by composers, Stabat Mater and the Te Deum, which is a celebratory text. The Stabat Mater text is medieval. It basically describes the experience of Mary, Jesus' mother, watching him die on the cross. So it's very tragic. Now, when, say, Haydn wrote a piece along those lines, he wrote a piece with 7 slow, dark, sad movements, the 7 last words of Christ on the cross. Rossini was too much of an entertainer to do something like that. So I think what we find is that much of the time he kind of ignores the text and writes operatically. That is, or the way a DJ would program an evening of music. That is, he alternates exciting and quiet and fast and slow and even kind of happy sounding movements. So we can read the text, but don't let that distract you from the music. So the first piece I'd like you to play is from towards the end of the piece. It's there are 10 movements, and this this is the 8th, right? Is that what I put in?
The first one is 8.
Yeah. So this is a big dramatic piece. We'll listen to the opening of it. Can you make it louder? Yeah, so that's music that, well, I mean, the sound is not too high in here, but is kind of threatening. It could be the aria of a character in an opera who the man she loves has just, told her, "Forget it, babe, I'm with her." It's a revenge aria. That's not the text at all. So that's one kind of music we have in this. The next is the finale of the Stabat Mater, which is a very interesting piece. The most popular mass sacred text for composers to set is, of course, the Mass. And even in Rossini's day, there were pretty firm traditions of what kind of music is provided for different points in the Mass. And one of the characteristic styles of music for the ending was the fugue. A fugue is an earlier style from the Baroque period, so it's reaching back into the past for a style that's not really current. Bach wrote lots of fugues, but it's very learned. You write a fugue when you want to show off that you really know your stuff. And even somebody like Rossini, who didn't need to prove anything to anybody, maybe needed to prove to himself that he could write a fugue with the best of them. And he really did, because not only is this a fugue, this is a fugue with two simultaneous themes that play off against each other, which is, only what somebody like Bach might do. Beethoven never wrote such a sophisticated fugue. So it can get very, very thick. So it's really an adventure to put together. But you'll hear now something completely different from what you just heard. Well, yeah, you just do that. That's fine. That's fine. Thank you. So that's something completely different from what we heard first. And it's actually probably the least Rossinian music in the program. But I want to leave the Stabat Mater with one more example, probably the only movement from the Stabat Mater that is ever taken out of context and sung in recitals. This is the most famous piece from the Stabat Mater. It's one of the pieces that Rossini added when he was preparing the piece for publication. It comes right at the beginning. It's the second movement of the 10, and it's an aria for the tenor. So that's our introduction to the Stabat Mater. Now that's the second half of the program. The entire piece lasts in the range of an hour, give or take. Hope it's not longer. We open the program with, as I said, the overture to Rossini's, well, one of the two big hits from his first year when he really made it big. Kind of like when the Beatles first went to the US. He was locally popular before, but that really exploded all over the world. So L'Italiana in Algeri is an opera that is it's a fairly common theme at the time that has to do with the meeting of different cultures, East and West, which had been a popular theme for a while already, with people still remembering. The cultural consciousness was still full of the Ottoman Empire's siege of Vienna in the middle of the 17th century. The last time the Ottoman Empire, meaning Turkey, made incursions into Central Europe. So from that time on, various Turkish instruments were popular, like cymbals, and the idea of this sort of meeting conflict, but also resolution among very different cultures was a thing. Mozart wrote an opera on this kind of theme, The Abduction from the Seraglio. This is not Rossini's only opera on that theme. He also wrote an opera a few years later called Il Turco in Italia, The Turk in Italy. So this is the other way around, the Italian in Algiers. We won't get into the music or even the plot. Rossini didn't typically write overtures that contained music from the opera itself, and it's easy to understand why. At the speed he had to write, he sometimes needed to borrow an overture from some other opera in order to have something ready for the first performance. Those of you who know the 𝗂𝒂𝒂𝒂 of Seville, the overture to the 𝗂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂 of Seville, he had already used for 2 previous operas, with just a few little detailed changes. I mean, I can hear a performance and tell you which of the previous ones was the source for this version. They're slightly different. The one thing when you hear it that I think you might think about is the denouement of this opera turns on an attempt to get the Turks who are kind of holding the Italians captive, to get them drunk so that they won't notice when the captives escape. So maybe you'll hear a hint of that, I hope, in the opera. In the overture. But one of the reasons I wanted to play that particular overture, well, first of all, we never hear it anymore. It used to be, when I was a student, say, we had to learn all these overtures, whether by Rossini or Carl Maria von Weber or Beethoven, because those were kind of the standard concert openers in a symphonic concert. So you had to have all these overtures in your pocket. Today, the place of those pieces has been taken mostly by new music, which is a great thing. It's very important that we play new music, and I certainly play as much of it as I can. But it means that there are other things we lose. So I'm very happy for the opportunity to play that piece. And why playing this piece is just to suggest the idea that Rossini's reach was not confined to Italy. It wasn't even confined to Europe. It even extended beyond Europe to Islamic countries and to the Americas. Each of Rossini's operas, once he became famous, was premiered within a few years of its Italian premiere, or even later, the French premiere, in New York, in New Orleans, which was probably the cultural center of the United States, and in South America, in Mexico City, in Buenos Aires, and in Rio de Janeiro. Because they wanted the latest thing. Now, to illustrate this, we could have programmed music kind of in the Italian, in the Rossini style, that came from Mexico or from Brazil or from Argentina. But then we'd have a concert where everything's in the same style, and that's no fun. So I wanted to have some variety. So just to have that little bit of suggestion, we're playing this wonderful piece by Heitor Villa-Lobos. That's not by Villa-Lobos. Now, the interesting thing about Brazil, if you ever watch the Olympics and watch the medal ceremonies, and a Brazilian wins the gold medal, they play the Brazilian national anthem. And you'd think you were hearing Rossini or Verdi, because it's right in that style. So I really wanted to bring that point home with some music by Villa-Lobos, who's the most famous Brazilian composer. It sounds nothing like Rossini. Don't expect to hear anything like that. But this is a very interesting piece. Villa-Lobos is most well known for a series of pieces he wrote called Bachianas Brasileiras, which are pieces that for him, they were inspired in one way or another by Bach, but in Brazilian style. That is, Brazil is a very interesting culture because it partakes of European, actually Italian more than Spanish or Portuguese. It was a Portuguese colony, but also from indigenous music. It's a much more blended society, although not without discrimination, say compared to the United States, much more integrated. So he also wrote a series of pieces that he called choros. A choro is a kind of Brazilian popular music from late 19th century, early 20th century. But these, again, are Villa-Lobos' own inventions using the flavors of both popular music and classical music in a Brazilian style. And the wonderful thing about this 10th choros is that it's a creation story. It is in two big parts, but we can almost think of it as in three parts. So it begins just in the orchestra with kind of unformed bits of melody, bits of rhythm, nothing quite amounting to anything continuous, as if atoms and molecules are coming together. Nature is starting, trees are growing, birds are singing, the world is coming into being. Maybe we play that first example. So little bits of things that sound like maybe they have the potential for growing into something, but they certainly aren't yet. They're pre something. Then that comes to some kind of big climax, and the music changes entirely. And we get some very rhythmic jungle kind of music, almost like Benny Goodman and in the 1930s, swing music, the jungle style with the tom-toms. And the choir, the singers start to sing, and each section of the choir, that is the sopranos and the altos and the tenors and the basses, are singing made up syllables, that is some kind of invented Aboriginal or indigenous language, each one singing a different language, as if each section is a different tribe. And maybe they are all struggling, for the same small amount of available food. You hear fights breaking out, you hear pain, suffering, and you hear kind of cries of triumph and stuff like that. Okay, but that's not the end of development in Brazil. After all, Europeans occupied Brazil, colonized Brazil, built cities and big establishments. That is, a modern society grew up, and Villa-Lobos develops that in the piece too. And what he did in order to illustrate this was borrow a turn of the 20th century Brazilian pop song, which probably everybody in the audience at the time, in the 1920s, would have been familiar with. Again, it's a pop song, so the text doesn't particularly matter. I mean, that the title we can translate as "Tear Out My Heart." That's just sort of, typical pop song. I mean, Taylor Swift could write a song called "Tear Out My Heart," and I'll tear out yours worse. So it's just the idea of this kind of sophistication. The funny thing about it is, though, that what Villa-Lobos didn't know when he chose this song was that it was still under copyright. And for that reason, they had to remove the text from the published score. So for all the years until very recently, performances and recordings, anything that used the original score, just had vocalese, that is, people singing on ah, ah. Now it's out of copyright. We know what the text is. We can put it back in. So in our performance, we're doing that. So you come, you'll hear the entire thing, I hope, as Villa-Lobos intended it. So here's the last example, which is the beginnings of that song. So the most sophisticated, we go from completely unformed world without form and void, as in Genesis, to this intermediate stage of indigenous people to the sophisticated 20th century world. So I hope that whets your appetite, makes your, well, I can't really say makes your ears water, but makes your mouth water for hearing, very mixed metaphors, for hearing this music. And I look forward to seeing you, well, some of you I know I'll see, on the 1st. Thanks for listening.
Thank you, Jerry, for this wonderful talk. So everybody, please come to our concert on Monday, December the 1st at 8 p.m. at the Hong Kong Cultural Center Concert Hall. That will be our concert with a 100-person strong choir and a 50-piece strong orchestra. So for the remaining time, I'll get Michael, who is our marketing manager and who is also an ambassador at Pinewood Wine, to give you a brief introduction to the wine that you're tasting tonight. Thanks, Michael.
Thank you, April. Thank you, Jerry. Thank you, Gladys. So finally, it's me introducing the wine to you. So letting you wait so long. I hope my wines make your mouth watering instead of the music. So the first wine that you had was the tobacco origin. Well, when in the title you say Bianco, which means a white wine, but when you see the color, when you saw the color, it's actually not quite white. It's actually quite amber in color, because it's actually what we call amber wine. It's an oxidized white wine style. So on the palate, you don't normally find this type of dried fruits, dried flowers flavors, because normally for like a Sauvignon Blanc or Riesling or Chardonnay, or if you joined our previous pre-talk concerts, you also tasted some of our fruity wines before. But for this one, it's not fresh at all. When you see the color, it's actually oxidized, so it turned to amber color. And in the nose and palate, you can actually feel the dried fruits flavors, dried flowers, and also the special thing about this wine that is aged in chestnut oak barrels for 2 years, which is a very unusual thing for white wines. Because normally for white wines, they just age it in barrels for at most like 6 months, or sometimes 1 year. And this was aged for 2 years. So this is a very special wine that I chose for the Rossini piece, because in my mind, as Jerry suggested, Rossini is probably one of the pearls in the world of music in the modern age. So I think, for me, amber wine or oxidized white wine is also one of the pearls in the world of wine. So I chose this wine for the Rossini music. And then for the second wine that some of you are tasting right now is the Amarone red wine. I'm not sure if you've heard of Amarone before. And Amarone is a special red wine made from the northern part of Italy. It's made from dried grapes instead of healthy fresh grapes. So also in the wine, you can actually taste some of the dried fruits and a very intense, like a black currant, blackberries, and also some dried raspberries, and also some floral, like what we always call a violet in the field. And also it was aged in oak barrels, so of course it also has that kind of oaky, woody taste in it. I think both of these wines are very special wines from Italy. The first one, the oxidized white wine, and the second one, Amarone. They are probably one of my favorite wine from Italy. So they are also of a limited production. So for both of them, we only have around like 30 bottles in our warehouse. So if you want to order, let me know. And today we are actually doing a very good promotion. As you can see on the form, we are doing a very good discount on it. And if you order 3 bottles of wine, any of the wines here, 3 bottles, we offer a free delivery already. Or if you want to buy like 1 bottle, I do have limited stock here that you can pick up. Or, because I'll be in a rehearsal tomorrow, so if you want to order, then I can bring it to the rehearsal room. But don't order 20 bottles from me, otherwise I will have to carry all the way to Cultural Center. And last but not least, as April said already, the very last bottle of wine is a vintage port. I'm not sure if any of you have tried port before, because port is a type of sweet red wine, and normally the general level of port wines are like a ruby port, tawny port, or sometimes what we call LBV, the late bottle vintage. And for vintage port 2027 is a very prestigious port wine, which I will pour to you later on. It has a very strong, intense, fruity flavors like the red currants, also some blackberries, black currants. But at the same time, because it's been aged for so long, it has that kind of like leather, leafy or earthy taste in the wine. And port is sweet, of course, but it's well balanced with its very high acidity, so you will not taste flabby at all. So port, of course, is also one of my very favorite type of wines. And for this one, it is even more limited, because in my warehouse, I only have 9 bottles left. But we also have other types of ports. So if this one is sold out, I do have other ports that I can offer you at a very similar discount. So do let me know if you are interested in the wines. I'm just here. So again, thank you so much, Bach Choir. Thank myself because I'm because I belong to both the choir and the representative from Pinewood Wine. And just for your information, I also teach 𝗪𝒔𝒂𝒕 level 1 and 2 in my office drinking room. So if you are interested in any wine study, also you can contact me. And I have my card here. If you wanna want any wines in the future, you can also contact me as well. So thank you, Gladys, again for giving us this amazing venue, very cozy, very beautiful place for us. And of course, thank you, Jerry, for such an amazing show as usual. And last but not least, thank you, April, chairwoman. So thank you everyone, and please enjoy the wine and come here, and I will do some review for you. For the previous 2 wines, the oxidized white and Amarone, I do have some portions left, so I can do a few reviews if you want to. So do come here, enjoy the food and the wine. Thank you, have a great night.
Thank you.